Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Don't Breathe 2, starring Stephen Lane, Brendan Sexton III, Madeline Grace, and Rocky Williams, directed by Rodo Seoges. Forgive me if I said that wrong. Now, I didn't really care for the first Don't Breathe as you saw on that show, and we'll see if this is any better. Let's get into it. 8 years after the events of the first film, Norman Nordstrom, returned by Stephen Lang, lives in a relative solitude with his 11-year-old daughter Phoenix, played by Madeline Grace, and his Rottweiler Shadow in the suburbs of Detroit, which looks kind of uglier than the last film. Norman tells Phoenix that they used to have another house, which burned down in a fire, and that their mother died in that fire. And I'm calling bullshit at this point, as this shouldn't have been made into a sequel because it's unnecessary, which is something I'm probably going to use again and again as it's more annoying. And like the last time, I don't like these characters that much, as Norman is fucked up in his own ways as the other characters, but yeah, unfortunately, it's not a reason for me to relate with them. And that was what my problem last time. Norman gets a supply drop from his friend and former Army Ranger Hernandez, who's a dreadful character. Hernandez, who is Norman's only connection with society, convinces a reluctant Norman to let her take Phoenix with her to run errands in town, and the most nasty as she tells him he's a bad man. And I do think that as well, but she's a terrible character who doesn't live that long, so that she can have some time out of the house, as she's an orphanage, because or a shelter, let's say, because she's led to believe kids are playing and having fun together, which makes sense for society, while Norman won't let her. And for what reason? Because the world is a bad place, as she's upset with Norman about when I get to the last scene later in the film. While running our errands together, Hernandez stops at a gas station to refuel. Phoenix is ambushed by a gang member in the gas station's bathroom, which I have a question. Is that the creepiest thing anybody could, including a gang member, would do to a child? As he briefly flirts with her, and I thought, dude, you're like twice her age. As this is the most uncomfortable scene I've ever been in a movie. However, Shadow scares the man away, but he gives the order to the gang to follow Phoenix back home, and we'll get why later in the film. But I thought at this time, because he wanted to her either as a slave or a sex pot, which is even weirder, as she's just a kid. After dropping off Phoenix, Hernandez is ambushed and killed by the gang, who proceed to head to Norman's house, which is kind of upsetting that someone would park in the middle of the fucking road like that. The gang lures Shadow away and kills him off screen, which is better than, say, I Am Legend with Will Smith, or even John Wick, who does get vengeance by the end of that movie, which I liked. Norman, who suspects something happened to Shadow since his food bowl's still full, goes outside to look for him, with the gang silently breaking into the house and to kidnap Phoenix, as she's too smart to get away from the robbers, but unfortunately isn't enough for the character. Norman finds Shadow dead from a bullet wound, which when I first saw that, it made me sad, but luckily it was off screen. Realizing that Shadow was shot, he heads back to the house to defend it in the most brutal and violent way possible. A struggle ensues between Norman and the gang members, which is again very fucking violent. Eventually, the gang leader shows up and tells Phoenix, who is hiding with Norman, that he is her real father, which I didn't see coming personally, so good on their part, confirming it by showing they both have a streak of white hair in the right side of their head, as it makes perfect sense because it was brought up earlier in the film. I did like that moment, I'll just give it that. It is revealed that 8 years prior, Phoenix's house burned down because a meth lab in the basement exploded, which makes sense as it was the opening scene in the movie. Phoenix's father was immediately taken into custody after the explosion and sentenced to 8 years in prison for various crimes, which is worse than what Norman went through as he was a veteran with a fucked up life, but a father as a professional criminal, which did bug the shit out of me. Norman found Phoenix's unconscious while examining the burned house with the shadow, and he took her home to fulfill his desire of having a daughter again, which, if you've seen the first film, it makes sense. Her father realized Phoenix was still alive after seeing her leave flowers for her mother's memorial at the burned house while running errands with Hernandez earlier in the film, which makes sense to the scene. I'll give it that. I didn't see that coming, which is good on their part, but it's not good enough for me to like this movie, unfortunately. A conflicted Phoenix tries to run away but is knocked unconscious by Raul, a gang member. And why the fuck would you knock out a kid unconsciously? This is a dumb movie without thinking its way through. Meanwhile, Phoenix's father sets his dog loose on Norman, who is reluctant to kill it, and decides to trap it in the attic instead, which was a twist from the first film. Well, not first film, but anyways. One where he sends a dog after Rocky, but doesn't succeed as it happens here. But with Norman, the gang decides to burn down the house, then proceeds to drive away with Phoenix captured, while they're led to believe the dog is inside and is dead. And how stupid are these people? I mean, Jesus Christ. Unbeknownst to them, Norman realizes the dog is from the attic, and they both manage to escape. And the burning house, and thank God. And Norman doesn't leave the dog dying, as he doesn't believe in that, and neither do I. So I'm glad that he got the dog out. Outside, Norman finds Hernandez's van and arms himself with several weapons in it, then leashes the dog so that it can lead him to the gang's location, which is a smart move on Norman's part. At the gang's headquarters, Phoenix's father reveals that her real name is Tara. She's then introduced to her mother, alive and is but terminally ill, as she sings the song her mother taught her earlier in the film. And the mother or in her life, I'll say, and the mother sings it with her, and I get the impression that they're not really her parents, as we'll see later, as she wants her heart and for Tara to have the fucked up lungs that her mother has, which doesn't make sense at all. Tara's mother explains that 8 years ago, she made a mistake cooking a batch of meth, leading to the explosion, and I thought, why would you do that with a little girl in the house? Which bothered me so bad. The chemicals which resulted from the fire ravaged her internal organs, leading to her current condition, which serves her fucking right. It is then revealed that the gang decided to kidnap Tara, only to have a criminal surgeon extract her heart to transplant it into her mother, since Tara is her relative, and again, it bothers me. The couple drugs Tara and takes her to a crude operating room, where the surgeon explains that due to the lack of proper equipment, he'll have to remove Tara's heart while she is fully conscious, as this is a seriously bad plot to a movie I did not like originally, and people did for unknown reasons, but this is a little worse than the original, as it shouldn't have been a sequel in the first place. A blackout stops the surgeon from extracting the heart. Tara's father sends Raul and the rest of his gang to investigate the basement, as they're so stupid to fuck with a blind man with the special skills in the first place, where they're ambushed by Norman, who picks them off one by one, and I just didn't care anymore, as this movie's already losing me at this point. Raoul, being the last man standing, decides he doesn't want to take part of it and part of parting Tara's killing, and sides with Norman, pointing him to where she is, which is a terrible way to end your career as a professional criminal. But at the same time, it's for a good reason. Norman ambushes the group, killing the surgeon first in a brutal way. A scuffle between him and the father ensures, where the father accidentally shoots Tara's mom, killing her, as he's a stupid character. Always, anyways, Norman that gouges the father's eyes out and leaves him for dead, which was fucking gruesome in the stupidest way possible. A tearful and severely injured Norman tells Tara that everything her father said was true, which is obvious, sure. He confesses his crimes, including murder and rape, and tells her to run away from him, which is fucking obvious, dude. Like, we saw the first film. The father, who had survived the fight, surprises and stabs Norman in the stomach, which is another thing I didn't see coming, as I thought he was dead. And I also thought, really, with that, before he's able to finish him off, Tara kills him with a knife, as Norman thought her to do, which I couldn't believe that as a plot of the movie. Tara attempts to help Norman and tells him she can save him, which he replies, "You already have," before dying, as I didn't buy that, honestly. Tara leaves the hotel and heads to a shelter she had seen at the beginning of the film, like the one I brought up earlier, as she does the right thing, but it takes her until the end of the movie to do so, and I had a problem with it. She sees kids playing and introduces herself as Phoenix, as she was inspired by Norman giving her that name, and these kids seem very nice, so I would have wanted to see that as a movie than continuing with Norman. And after the credits, we see the dog licking Norman's fingers as it moves rather slowly, as he might return for another sequel that I hope never happens, in my opinion. I'll just say that much. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 3.9 out of 10. It's much more dark and much more uglier than the first film, which I didn't even like, as here it's half a rating times worse. I didn't like the characters like I sort of did the first time, and the movie got pretty uncomfortable to watch at times. The plot made this movie as a dumb movie with the first movie people liked, but I didn't like this one either, as it didn't make sense at times, and I hope they don't make a third film based on the box office on this one. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for this Don't Breathe series, and until then, don't breathe. The guy's right behind you.